here we are, Saturday, and sports.
This is The Cross Section with Nate Lull and David Edelstein.
I'm Nate Lull. I work for WCDO Radio in Sydney. I'm our sports director, and Sydney's kind of in the heart of Section 4. So the main counties that we cover are Otsego, Delaware, and Shenango counties. So I cover the Tri-Valley League, the MAC, the Delaware League, and a little bit of the STAC. And I dip my finger into Cooperstown a little bit in Center State Conference. So that's kind of my neck of the woods, and it's been great to connect with you.
Yeah, we haven't actually gotten a chance to meet in person, although we were planning on that before, of course, all travel slowed down dramatically about a month ago. I'm David Edelstein, sports director at WUTR, WFXV, WPNY, the ABC, Fox, and MyTV affiliate in Utica, New York. We are kind of in the middle of Section 3, and we really have kind of the eastern part of it, because Section 3 goes out to Syracuse. And I don't necessarily focus as much on the Syracuse area schools, but from west, I'd say we kind of are following the Oneidas, the Vernon Verona Sherrill schools out west, all the way through Utica, Whitesboro, Notre Dame. You go out east more to Dolgeville, Little Falls, Herkimer. Those are kind of the eastern ones. And we're also all the way from up top in Old Forge, which is like an hour and a half north if you're on a good day, all the way down to Unitiga, which I know is Section 4. You're the Section 4 expert, but we do have in our market the Cooperstown Section 3, the Otsego County teams, Lawrence, Gilbertsboro, Mount Upton, and all of those. So I guess we're going to brand you as the Section 4 expert, and I could be the Section 3 expert if anyone so chooses to call us an expert in that.
Well, it's neat how our territories kind of cross over, and I feel like I know from my area, our listeners, our parents, our kids really appreciate when the TV people come into the area. We get a little bit of Binghamton from WBNG coming up, but it's been great to have you come down. It's something that we're not used to with our sports all the time. We're kind of in a weird media dead zone. So it's great to see more exposure for the kids. And I know that's one thing that coaches always say to me is that they just appreciate any time the media takes the opportunity to come out to a game or interview the kids. So I think this will be great, and I know they love seeing you around, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, one thing I'll say, that the first way that I kind of found out who you were was, besides your massive online Twitter following, you obviously have a ton of stats for Section 4, and like we were talking about the other day, you're there, and there really isn't as much going on because for those who might not be as familiar with how television markets are set up, Nielsen kind of splits us up into DMAs, different markets, just determine where the cable channels will be. And the way that the Utica one is set up, even though Utica is, right near the thruway, exit 31 and all that, it's Herkimer County, which is very, north and south oriented, and goes through the East Oneida County and then down to Otsego. So it's while it's not as wide west to east, it's very wide north to south. And then you think about it, you end a show at 6:30 p.m., run to a game, and then you come back for the 10 o'clock show and get everything ready. By the time I would get to Otsego or Cooperstown sometimes, if I hadn't done the pre-planning, it would take, by the time I got there, either the game would be over already or I'd have to turn around anyway at the moment that I arrived. So there is that unfortunate part. And I think video chatting now has kind of changed how that will work in the future, which we could definitely talk about at some point. And then Binghamton's the other one that covers most of the Section 4 sports television. And they're, I'm sure, have the same kind of situation where Binghamton's quite the drive to the middle. So, I know people, I've heard a lot of people, you're very famous in the Section 4 area because you are the one guy there. And I've definitely appreciated being able to get in touch with some more of our Section 4 teams as well. and talk about Section 3 here. But
yeah, I'm lucky that I am kind of in that middle zone where it is a long drive, and the TV world, as you said, it is very hard because you're on such a time crunch. I have more of the luxury of being able to go to a game and hang out and talk to parents and coaches. And if we're there for the radio, we're there, so it's great to have that, to be able to go and spend some time to get to know people. But I just think that we're in a very rural area, so taking the time to go out as you've done and come down here, people really appreciate it. And so I've tried my best to do that. I know the newspapers around are trying their best as well. It's just hard times. Everyone's on a budget crunch. But I growing up in this area, I value and I kind of know what these athletes and these coaches have gone through, and I know what I felt when I was playing and being in school here. So I always try to keep that in the back of my head and think, I know that it would have meant a lot to me, so I know what it means to these athletes when you show up and put the time in. And I love it. I mean, honestly, there's no place I'd rather be than at a game or a track meet or whatever. So for me, I'm going and I'm having fun. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, you actually grew up here and went to Gilbertsville, Mount Upton, right?
I did. I went to GMU, graduated, went off to college. I was gone for probably about 11 or 12 years total, but I had the opportunity to come back, and I was nervous. I hadn't been here in a long time, but I kind of knew deep down that I always kept an eye on what was happening here and who the good teams were, and who was going to states. And I kind of knew that if I got sucked back into this scene, I was really going to enjoy it, and I was right, because to me, I'm not that interested in moving up or going to a bigger market right now, because I just love what I'm doing, and that makes going to work every day a lot of fun.
Did you play sports while you were in high school? Did you ever play for Section 4?
I did. I mean, I went to a Class D school, so you don't really have to worry about tryouts or anything. They're hoping to have enough guys to have a team. So I did. I played soccer and basketball, and I played baseball until we got a track team. And then I started running track my sophomore year, and that's been a real blessing because I still love running today, and it's a big part of my life. So I've taken a lot of what I learned then and put it into my personal life and my professional life.
So you were a 4-sport athlete. We've got to pull out the old Nate Lull highlights. I don't know where they are in the archives, but we'll find them.
I was kind of your late bloomer role player type of guy. So I don't know if you'll find many highlights out there.
Hey, listen, I got my varsity letter in baseball announcing in high school. So.
Hey. Good.
I had played tennis, and my highlight of my career in sports was in 4th grade. I scored the winning run in our town's Little League World Series. So,
yes.
Not the Little League World Series, but like my town's Little League World Series for like my age group.
Right.
So
I'm curious, do you find it hard to come into the area as a new reporter? Like, I felt like when I came back, I still knew some people. I knew some coaches that could immediately plug me in. And just being a local, I kind of felt like I had an edge up. So what's it like coming to an area that's this small where you're the new guy on the block and you don't know how to get around and all those? That's got to be difficult.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thought. If you haven't noticed my pennant behind me yet, I did graduate from Syracuse University, so I kind of feel like I was nearby, and I kind of feel like this area, there are a lot of people that are Syracuse fans. I still see a lot of Syracuse gear around, so a lot of Orange pride, so I feel like I still got that. But it is different in really 2 major ways. You mentioned that it's a small area. The interesting thing for me is, so like with that Nielsen market that I talked about, there's Syracuse has its own, which is a pretty big one. Then you have Utica, which is the Herkimer County, Otsego County, Madison County, East Oneida, which is a little smaller because it's in between. And then you've got Albany, which is another big one. Just the way that they drew the lines. So, but oftentimes in television media, you'll hear people talk about starting out at a small market to start their career. And while Utica is, I think in 2020, the 171st out of 206, 216, something like that, markets, which means that it is the 171st most populated. It's based on how many households with televisions there are. So this area, Herkimer County, Otsego, all that, is numerically number 171 if you listed everyone from the area with the most houses with televisions, which is New York, down to us. So it's a small market, but what I really appreciated, besides the location, I'm from New Jersey, so this is close to home. I actually moved closer to home, which a lot of people moving here haven't to work here. But what I love is that for sports, it's really big. I mean, my 6th day on the job, I was interviewing Mariano Rivera at the Baseball Hall of Fame in July.
Right.
That is, you think Utica's a small market, and then you show up on your 6th day and you've got ESPN Deportes, ESPN, NBC Universal, every local media outlet from other markets too coming here. I mean, this is international news. I mean, right? That's not small to me. You've also got the AHL Utica Comets here, which I cover along with the high school sports. You've also got, Colgate. You've got the Utica College, MVCC, the Hamilton College, the Division III through community college through Division I athletics. And then I think I counted like 36 high schools. If I got to with how many. So the first answer to that question is that I really don't think it's a small area, but it definitely takes a lot to make those connections. I showed up and literally first day was just, you're in the deep end, swim. Okay. Right. You just start calling people, and I started in the summer when there was maybe less going on. There were some baseball things, and you just start showing up and introducing yourself. So that was cool. I've always loved talking to people and meeting people, even though I'm an extrovert, sometimes I'm an introvert. I don't like walking up to people randomly, but now it's part of the job. You just say hello to fans. You get their number, they text you scores and stuff. You get to know people, you get to know the coaches, you get to know the teams, and that's what's built up for me. The other part is, being in the new area. You asked, how has it been like making those contacts? And that's kind of that aspect is you just, there's a lot going on. Yeah. And being new to the area, I feel like it's new learning how to drive around. I mean, I needed to ask a lot of people where schools were and where gyms were and things. And I guess that's what, freshman year of everything, right? This is freshman year of that. Long answer, long.
No, exactly. That's interesting. I've always wondered, I worked in other markets. I got a chance to work in Buffalo for a long time after I was in college. But coming back, I felt like I had an immediate jump on things because I knew people. I at least knew, hey, I know where that field is, even though it's behind the school, down over the river, that whole type of thing where all these small schools have different quirky setups and things like that. So it was good for me to come home, but I'm sure how other people did it.
Yeah, I'm sure like you feel this way too. And this is something that I really want to talk with you about that I think people will be interested in with this like situation that's going on now with sports. But in general, first, one thing that I love, and you being from here, you might have known this before you even came back to work here, is how each community has its own like community feel. Like everyone around sports is coming together. And you mentioned a moment ago, really nicely in words, what I'm kind of feeling is like how much everyone really appreciates the high school sports and the coverage that each of us get to provide. That's what I love about it, is going to these communities, getting to know the different communities and their different traditions and community feels, and share those stories with the community, with them and with others, and highlight the accomplishments and hard work of everyone. And it's just so weird at this time now to not be with those communities, and to be, for me, sports is always the place where, one, it takes your mind off anything else that might be going on, go into a game. Two, it brings people together, literally, which is the ironic part right now, because in the time where we all want to be together, we like sports. Sports is usually the thing that brings us together. We can't be there right now. But also just, you can meet anyone. If you are rooting for the same team, doesn't matter what your differences are, you're next to them, give them a high five when your team wins. Like that's the magic of sports. And it's interesting right now to see us not have that, and how sports has kind of, we've been trying to find the different stories that are out there. And like you said, it gives me I get my energy from telling the stories of the people and seeing how much they appreciate having their stories told.
I knew that each town had or each community, each school had their own identity here. But even when I was in school and playing, I saw mostly the teams in my league, which is the Tri-Valley. So I was very curious to come back and learn more about the teams in the MAC, the Delaware League. So that's been a big part for me, is getting to know each school's, little events and traditions. And I absolutely love that stuff. I'm fascinated by it because each school is so different. But yet the same. And one thing that I've noticed since kind of being away and not going to games is at each school I have made a set kind of group of friends with assistant coaches or parents or administrators. And because you're at games all the time, you're communicating with them, you're seeing them, you're keeping up on their lives. And now that I haven't had that, I've just been texting with people and they're like, hey, how you doing? It feels like months and months that I haven't seen them. And it's really in reality only been 4 or 5 weeks. But I guess I didn't realize really how connected I had become to a lot of these schools and people that I get to know from telling their stories and going to games and seeing their kids grow up. And that's been really fascinating to me, is to see how much I miss them in my life. I can't imagine life without it. So this is a strange time.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear kind of what your experience has been over the past month now. It's, for me, I remember it was March 12th when I was down in Cooperstown in Unitigo talking to the girls basketball teams about their upcoming state game, which then later that day was postponed and then eventually canceled. I can't believe, like you said, it feels like years. It's been a month and 6 days. But I'm curious to hear about what your experience has been. What have you been hearing from the different players in Section 4 and the coaches as far as what they're feeling right now, with especially the teams that have had their seasons cut off? Because I feel like that might be even more impactful than having the season delayed, just because they were expecting to play at a really state game. What have you been hearing from the coaches and the players just about how they're feeling with all this happening down there?
I've heard, and you can speak to this as well, I've heard a variety of things. I've heard the people who are still very hopeful, coaches and players, hey, we need to somehow make sure that we get a season and get some normalcy back, and hopefully the state can do something, and I hope they have a little bit more time, and they're kind of looking at this April 29th deadline that the state has set to make a decision, at least for spring sports. They've kept up a lot of hope. And then there's another group that I'm finding has said, okay, Nate, we just got to rip the Band-Aid off, and I need to deal with this mentally. I need to know that the season is done, whether it was my winter sport, whether it's the spring season. I need to know what I need to do going forward. Like, why are we messing around with this? I've heard a lot of people say, pro sports leagues and big events in June and July are getting postponed, like the Boilermaker. And why are we still talking about this? We need to just say, okay, high school sports is done, and that's that. And now we start worrying about the fall. So it's been really interesting, and I feel like I kind of fall somewhere in the middle. I'm always hopeful that maybe there's some magical way we could have some sort of a mini league season. I was talking to an athletic director yesterday, and she talked a lot about getting normalcy back to the kids, and maybe we could do like a mini league tournament and just crown a champion and call it a day. But at the same time, I totally understand the people that are like, look, I don't see how we could do it at this point with the state being shut down until May 15th. How can we do this? Can we just make a decision so that we can accept it, cry, get the tears out, and move on? So I feel like I'm stuck in the middle. It's just a hard situation. There's no right or wrong answer, I guess.
One quote that I heard from someone I interviewed, not even related to sports, just in that first week after everything, sports world changed and everything in our world seemingly changed. Someone said, we're all beginners when it comes to this, because from obviously me, people younger than me, obviously, and all the way up to my now 96-year-old grandfather, no one has gone through this before, and it's just new, and we're all navigating it together. I've definitely heard a lot from Unitigo girls varsity basketball team, obviously in Section 4, and the Cooperstown girls varsity basketball team, who they were supposed to play, the Section 3. From them, that they were, the changes were, they were nervous at first, and then the changes came really quick, and they're kind of obviously upset that they won't get a chance to see what happened. The biggest thing that I'm hearing from the seniors specifically is twofold. One, they've been saying they're not ready to not play with their teammates again. And for them, it's a lot about, winning's cool. We won our section. We ended with a win. Awesome. They said there's nothing to regret. But no matter what the school is, no matter who I've talked to, they've all said, I'm just not ready to not play with my teammates again anymore. I want to play with them again. I didn't know that was going to be my last practice. Didn't know that was going to be my last game. And suddenly it became that, even though we won and maybe expected we were going on. And here in Section 3, the Whitesboro boys varsity ice hockey team was playing in the state tournament. They had lost the Section 3 championship game against Skinny Atlas. And then this happened to be the year that Section 3 got an at-large bid to go to the state tournament. So Whitesboro became the 8th seed in the state tournament. So they actually moved on for, I think it's the second time ever. It's definitely it's the first state tournament they've been to in 17 years since the Warriors won it in 2002, 2003. That's the year these kids, the seniors, were born.
Right.
It's been that long. And so they're like, wow, they were joking that they're the second most successful team in Whitesboro history. And they go and win the regional round. So they're one of the 4 teams left in the state. And then, of course, first it's no fans. I was talking to some of them yesterday. They were getting ready to get on the bus the next day for the weekend for the semifinals and finals. And that's when it was postponed and of course, later canceled. So just I hear it in their voices that they're kind of, I love how they've spun it, optimistically to, there's nothing to regret and we're going to be there for them next year. We're supporting them. It just shows what we can do. It's good to have ended with a win, because all 3 of the teams that were left for winter sports that I was covering, those 3, they all ended with a win. But yeah, you were just mentioning the now May 15th date. You and I both got a chance to speak with Executive Director Rob Zayas, of the New York Public High School Athletic Association. And I just remember a few weeks ago, he was telling me that, the goal right now is, besides having a state tournament for spring sports, just get them on the field, competing with their friends, playing, and just wearing their uniforms and getting to be with each other. But how realistic do you think that is? I'm not asking you to predict
right.
what's going to happen. We are not experts in the health field. We are just following the directions. But how realistic is it as far from a sports perspective of, let's say that May 15th that you come back? You and I both have spoken with Piper Seaman from the Cooperstown girls varsity basketball team. And she told me the other day, she's like, if I told you I'm still working out, but if I told you I was in the same shape I was, I'm definitely not. How realistic is it to just even get something going? You'd have to start, I think you'd have to start practices again, right? And then,
Well, one of the athletic directors that I spoke with yesterday said, okay, even if it was May 15th, we'd still be required to do 2 weeks of practice. They did waive the 7-day rule, so you're looking at 2 weeks of practice. So you're looking at the end of May. Maybe you could get into June, but she also brought up the point of finals and schoolwork and exams. Of course, no regents. But yet throw all that in there, and her words were, it looks pretty bleak. I know there's a lot of other people that are very rah-rah saying, let's go into June, let's go into July if we have to. But what makes me nervous is what I said before about if they're canceling events like Boilermaker, not canceling, but postponing events like Boilermaker and some other local events in our area. A lot of people are worried about the Gus Macker 3-on-3 basketball tournament that's in Norwich that draws in thousands and thousands of people. And that's on the fence right now. They canceled the General Clinton Canoe Regatta, which is huge down here on Memorial Day weekend. It just looks like the writing is not very good on the wall. I'm always hopeful that something will change, but and some other guests I've had on my podcasts that are kind of more national type guests have said what the NFL is looking at in the fall and Major League Baseball. It's just like, wow, if those leagues are having a tough time with it, I have a hard time believing that we'll get anything set for the high school season. But again, fingers crossed, I hope I'm wrong. So
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not a health expert. I follow the directions of what the health officials say, and when sports come back, they'll come back, and then we'll be more than happy to tell those stories. I hope that there's some way to honor them. And, I know you've been doing your podcast, which is a great way to get different perspectives from players and coaches and other media professionals to just get the word out there and feature them. I've been talking to the high school seniors who have kind of had their seasons affected right now. It's just, what worries me is that I've heard, the health officials say it's possible there won't be concerts until fall of 2021, with the vaccine and everything coming out, hopefully. And, and to me, a comparable thing to a concert is a sporting event because of the draw of the amount of people. I mean, I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on playing sports without fans at first, just to get them going? It just feels like it's a very tricky situation that we really just have to wait out more than anything.
Yeah, and that's what Dr. Zayas kept saying. I kept trying to poke and prod him a little bit to give me something, but he said, Nate, the biggest thing I've learned is that we have to wait with this because there are no concrete answers. I would be up for playing games with no fans. I think it would be worth it just to take that first step to get back to some sort of normal routine. And if that's what it takes is to have a glorified scrimmage, I think everyone would welcome that. The athletes, of course, and the coaches, but even the parents at home, just knowing, hey, my kids are getting active again, getting out of the house, getting back into their routine, seeing their friends. But again, it's hard to guarantee the safety of everybody until we know a little bit more medically about things. So it's going to be a tricky line, and I don't envy the person who has to make that decision. And I know the state has said that it's going to come down to each section making their own decision possibly about what they want to do, if they want to have a little league tournament or a sectional tournament, something like that. So the people making those decisions, that's going to be really, really tough. And I'll be very interested to see if one section goes one way and one goes another, what happens with that?
One thing that just popped in mind is the idea of sport as a whole. So what is a sport, a competition? What is, a game? And what is just playing? And it almost feels like whereas sport maybe is the really organized level of that, where you have, sections and leagues and certain schedules and you're playing each other throughout the year. It seems like the sport part, not obviously we refer to sports as sports, but the sport aspect of being organized like that, we're almost looking at it as just like, let's find a way to just play, Right. We're all cooped up inside. Let's find a way when it's safe to allow people to just get back out onto a field and just play with each other and just be together. That aspect of it. We're not even looking at, who's going to win, who's going to be a champion, but just being out there. And I think it's actually impressive that not one of the student athletes I've spoken with has said, oh, I miss it because we can't win a title. We can't win the game. It at this point, it doesn't have to do with winning. It has to do with, hey, I just want to play. I just want to wear my uniform was one of the things I heard. And we can all really relate to that.
I think kids would be excited even to just go to practice at this point and be around their friends. And even if they had a scrimmage at practice and got to see their coach, I think at this point they'd be very happy, because that's another thing I've heard is put the sports to the side. I'm not going to get my prom. I'm not going to get my graduation party. Those last 2 days of school, which we all know are some of the best days that you ever have, where you're getting to be with your friends and do some fun things at school. I think a lot of kids now are at the point where they're worried about that. And that breaks my heart too, knowing that they might not get those things. So I think any return to normalcy, I've never seen kids so excited to want to go back to school. I mean, this is mark this day in history, right? So it's interesting. I don't know what's going to happen, but I hope they get a chance to go back and have those memories.
You had mentioned that you heard from some of the players that you were speaking with, the student athletes, of creative workouts that they were doing or that coaches were providing to, hey, we're at home, we're not on the court, we're not on the field, but what can you do to stay active? I've kind of heard of some people, using, like water jugs for like, aren't bicep curls or, just doing push-ups and things, or if they've got got a basketball hoop on the driveway or something. What are some of the creative workouts that you had heard about? I'm curious.
I've seen a lot of that stuff, but I've seen a lot of coaches sending out different challenges to their team and requesting to get a video back. So I've seen a lot of kids doing things I never thought that I'd see them do, running up a mountain or doing a P90X for the first time, and they're just absolutely gassed, trying to do things at home and get creative. And so that's more of what I've seen is coaches really taking those extra steps, going that extra mile to say, hey, guys, let's get active. If he can do 15 push-ups, you got to do 20, and then he's got to do 25, and just kind of keep that competition going. So, but I have seen some of the videos online of people, bench pressing some funny things they had around the house or different at-home workouts. Because if you can't go to the gym and that's your thing, like that's a big problem. I mean, I've seen a lot of the Cooperstown baseball guys. They're out there with their dad and they're doing every drill they can possibly think of to do with two people and trying to get batting practice in. And a lot of kids are trying their best to just hopefully stay in shape and stay active.
I think it's interesting to see how everyone's kind of connected through social media, where I see a lot of coaches tweeting out like, hey, here's what I did today. What'd you do? And it's almost, right. It is kind of like that challenge or that like, it's almost a way of bringing the team together still, even while everyone's separated, because that team chemistry is so important, especially if a team does get a chance to get back on the field this year or next year, whenever it is, to know that through this time they kind of stayed together by, hey, I did this basketball drill today, or I did, even just lunges or push-ups or sit-ups or whatever. Yeah. I'm, saying, hey, this workout tired me out. How'd you guys do with it? I think it's cool to see how people are using social media to stay connected for what it's for, social media, because we're all, inside and having to not be on the same field.
I've seen a lot of creative TikTok videos and dances and anything that they can incorporate with sports and dancing seems to be happening right now. So.
Yeah, it's creative. It's cool. I wonder how that's going to last when we go back. Yeah, I've been always asking people, whether it's online school or whether it's sports in some way or how we're all connecting. I've always been interested to hear from people I've spoken with how they think this situation that we've been thrown into, what aspects we've learned about how, like, things that work well, and that might continue into when everything returns to normal. So will those fun videos continue? Will people still challenge each other to do different sporting exercises or whatever it is, as everything goes back to what we would say is normal?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're going to see a lot of different changes come out of this time. And hopefully there'll be some creative things that you would only think of in a time like this that then stick and become part of our daily lives. But, one thing that was nice this week, a little sense of, like you said, a normal routine, was seeing the all-state lists come out for boys basketball. I know the girls comes out in about a week and a half now. That's the thing. They release the boys and then everyone's like, hey, where's the girls list? But don't worry, that'll be out. I think it's April 29th is the release date. But that was nice to see some of those guys that worked really hard in our, your section 3, my section 4, get those accolades. I think that was really neat this week. And you can see when you post that type of information, people are just all over it because the little sense of back when life was normal.
Again, sports is what brings us together. And, it's kind of the distraction to all the other craziness. But again, ironically, sports is what is one of the main things that's been affected because of the whole you can't come together. Yeah. Speaking of the list, though, that's good that you bring that up. There were a lot of interesting selections, and I think that, congratulations to all of them that have made the teams. It was the boys small schools list, so Class B, C, and D. Congratulations to them. I mean, a lot of these names definitely, I could have predicted that they would have been on it just from watching them. And what's cool is to see some of these names that I've gotten to speak with them or I've done stories with them throughout the season, and not only know that they're really putting their effort in on the court, and the statistics speak for themselves. But I always love to say, okay, you have these numbers, but who are you as a person? What are you doing? What's your mindset here? And it's awesome to see that each of these names that I'm looking at on here, all are really in it for more than just scoring points. They're not just in it to, oh, look at me, I made the first team, I made the fifth team, look at how great am I? But they're in it because their individual stories of how they got there, or why they want to work hard, or proving to themselves or to those who support them that they're right, to believe in them. And that's something that I've always found is pretty cool. You said that you have some insight on how the selection happens. So, because it seems like to me it's a challenge for, I'm Section 3 or Section 4, but I can tell you I've never seen anyone in Section 1, 2, I've never seen them play, let alone, like I was saying, unfortunately, I don't always get to make it to the own teams that are in the own television market here. So what is your insight on how these decisions are made on such a big scale, which is all of New York?
So it's an interesting process. And one thing I'll throw out there as a disclaimer is people always think that we make the selections ourselves, and that's not the case. I've had a lot of people say, well, why was so-and-so on the second team? They should have been on the first team. So basically the selections are made by a committee for each sport through the New York State Sports Writers Association. So there's a committee that's, has a head and then some other people who help for each sport. And what has been interesting about it is, as you said with your point, they can't see, it's impossible to see everybody play throughout the state when you're talking about all the sections from Buffalo to the North Country to Long Island, the Southern Tier. So they're relying on the different media outlets to get them that information. And the biggest thing that I've heard since I started to get involved about 4 years ago is that with newspapers having a reduced staff or maybe not existing anymore, the places that the committee would go to get this information is starting to dry up, especially in places like ours, because they just don't have a way to get the information, concrete information. So unless a coach or a media outlet goes out of their way to get the committee the information, a student athlete can get lost in the shuffle. And I think that's, and I don't want to speak ill of the committee at all, because I think they do a fantastic job and they take a lot of heat, which is not deserved, because they're doing the absolute best that they can. They're digging, they're trying to find people to get connected with, but that's how it can happen sometimes. So I have tried to do my best for my area to send in as much information as possible, if not overload the committee with information. And when I first started doing it, they were like, wow, we've never gotten information like this from these schools. Does it take me a little extra time to go to each coach, make sure all the facts are correct? Yes, but I'd rather a kid get an opportunity to make that list, because it's a lifelong memory and they've worked so hard, they deserve it. So I'm glad to do that. And I honestly feel like it's part of my job to do that. But I can see where in other parts of the state, if they don't have that information, they might not be able to find it. That person might not be able to make the list. So this is kind of my call. If a coach is listening or another media member, you can get involved. They are starving to get this information. And if you want your kids recognized in your area, it's important to either find a media member that has that connection with the state, or you can email them directly. I mean, they're very open to getting information from coaches as well. So it's an interesting process, and they're doing the best they can. But that's kind of my backstory, because I think a lot of people just assume that, the media just comes up with these awards just out of thin air. And that's it takes weeks and weeks and weeks of planning, and they do the best they can. It's never going to be perfect. But I've really kind of got to peek behind the curtain, and it's been interesting.
Yeah, I could say I definitely did not have any selection choice. I don't think I sent any information either, honestly, unless they saw some of my stories online and the accomplishments.
They do that. They will go to it. They might watch one of your stories, get the name, research from there. So you doing that is huge. But at the end of the day, like, there's just not as many newspapers as there used to be, and that's where you go. I remember back in the day, you could open a newspaper and they'd have the scoring leaders in the entire area and how many 3-pointers they made. And I'm just seeing less and less of that now. So it's harder for them to get the info.
Yeah, it's definitely that's one of the biggest challenges that I realized about covering high school sports is getting the information. Whereas colleges, obviously professional teams have online websites. They keep very good track. They have staff to do that. The high schools don't. It's volunteers keeping the book. When I go and check the book at halftime, take pictures for the names, I see them, comparing, oh, did they get this one shot? No, oh, it's 1 point off. Then, it's hard to get high school information. So it's awesome, like I said, to have seen you getting all of that information from the Section 4 teams. Section 3 now has a website where we've been able to work with coaches, and I have the coaches send me the stats and the books and everything and keep track of that. But it is interesting to think about that on the huge scale of New York. New York is a big state. Is it 10 sections, right?
11, yeah.
11, right, 11. There's a lot of people involved and a lot of sports involved to try and figure that all out. I'd be interested to go through the list of who's from Section 4 and Section 3 who made the list, and just kind of talk about some of them briefly. I know that here in Section 3, for Class C, Herkimer's senior Jordan Leno made the first team. And I got a chance to talk with him, and he told me he didn't even realize how big this was at first, that it was the whole state, that he was one of the 5 players to make the first team. But again, he was the one who kind of said, I take this as motivation to say, hey, the people who are believing in me, thank you, because I'm proving to you that I'm putting in the work and doing that. And I could just say that, even though it's so hard to make the decision, and, you should always take it with, obviously anyone who made the list is deserving of huge recognition. Jordan Leno, for those who might not be as familiar with him, was phenomenal to watch. I was at many of the Herkimer games this year. I was at the first 2 games for Herkimer this season, and also their few, obviously, in the middle, and their last regular season game. Jordan was really a dominant force on the court. Scoring-wise, the numbers were there. He broke the Herkimer all-time scoring record career this year. But in that same game, through just 3 quarters, he had 55 points. So it just shows, again, I don't want to only look at the numbers, but his numbers, he averaged nearly 31 points a game this year, and was just a leader as a person, too, when I got a chance to talk with Coach Mark Blask and Jordan himself and the other players. The crazy thing about this story, besides, you look at that, you're like, wow, how great, that's awesome. This year, he started playing basketball in 6th grade after one of his teammates decided, because he moved to Herkimer, and one of his teammates said, oh, hey, you want to play basketball one day? And he was like, sure. And then his teammates were saying, he just all of a sudden started blowing them out of the water. They play one-on-one, and then he'd start dominating. So how late he started and now is on the first team his senior year, that's just a really impressive story that I've enjoyed meeting him and his teammates and coaches over this year, and just watching him play. So I think that even though it's hard to make the decisions, that he definitely deserved to be on the first team.
Oh, I agree. I got to see him in that Cooperstown tournament, and he lived up to the hype for sure. He was really fun to watch. I think wherever he ends up for college, I don't know if he's made that decision yet, but
not yet. He told me he's still kind of deciding that now, and things have gotten a little delayed with a pandemic happening.
Right.
But what about for you? I see in Class B, which is the biggest schools right now, that for Section 4, Graham Wooden made the 3rd team. What did you get to see from him? Because I didn't get to watch him play as much.
Yeah, he's just a great all-around athlete, great person. Had him on my podcast a couple of weeks ago. He committed to Division II Mansfield. Just one of those kids that works night and day on his game, and he's kind of given up a lot of other aspects of his high school life to commit to basketball. It's really paid off for him. So I might have even put him a little higher than third team, but he deserves to be the highest guy in Class B around here for sure. Just a great player. And then the other guys that I had from my neck of the woods were all Norwich guys. Carson Maynard made the 8th team, and Norwich made it to the sectional final. He was one of their best guards. And then JT Vinyl and Tommy Flanagan are two guys that could fill up the stat sheet. So they both made honorable mention. So all great selections from my neck of the woods in Class B.
Yeah, Eddie King from Mount Markham made Class B honorable mention. And in Mount Markham, I didn't get to see play as much as I would have liked to this year. But I mean, when I would call highlights and I would put together highlights, his name would always pop up. And just a little insight on how I do that when I make the highlights. It's not always about, oh, wow, what a great shot that was. Look at how good that three-pointer was. Like, I'll save some of those plays for the top plays of the month if that happens. Sometimes unless it's absurd, then it will definitely make it in no matter when it happens. But the way I like to approach highlights is I kind of think of what's the story here? What's the story of the game? How do I need to tell this best in the few seconds I have visually? Who made the impactful statistics? And I'll tell you, when I was choosing the situationally good, situationally impactful moments, baskets, sometimes it could just be a layup. Eddie King was the name that kept popping up. It was either a defensive block, it was either him getting the ball, whatever it was, situationally, his name kept popping up. Even if I didn't look for the coolest shot that day, I was looking for what's the most impactful thing that led to this team winning or losing. And his name would constantly pop up as an impactful moment. So I think that says a lot for a player to be great with stats, obviously, but be there in the right moments.
Sure. Yeah, anytime that I've watched highlights, he seems to be hitting threes from the parking lot. He just seems like that guy who can just shoot and shoot. And I'm talking to some coaches in Section 3. They're like, when you play Mount Markham, you got to know where he is.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking at Class C too. Most of the players from Section 3, and I see, a lot of Section 3 here for Class C. Daquan Grant, I got to see who he made the 5th team from Utica Academy Science. I saw him a few times, and also in that first game of the season that I'd seen playing against Herkimer. So the two of them, Jordan Leno and Daquan Grant, it was obvious that they were stepping up for their teams from the beginning. And you were mentioning the Cooperstown game too. You got a chance to obviously see a lot of John Kennedy, who made the 2nd team, 6'9" junior, who actually he broke the record for Cooperstown blocks this year, and it was his brother's record that he broke.
His brother Owen was an absolute beast as well. If they were ever on the court at the same time later, like if they had both been like a senior and a junior, I mean, it just would have been unstoppable. They were just absolute monsters. And John is another kid who just really worked on his game from where he started to now, night and day. Unbelievable. But definitely deserves 2nd team. Got to see him get that. As you said, there's a lot of Section 3 names on this list. Talking to a lot of coaches in both sections, a lot of people agreed that the champ of Section 3, again, much like Cooperstown last year, was going to have a good chance to win at States because that's how deep Section 3 was, how loaded they were. So, again, it's a shame we won't get to see that. I think it was Newfield Weedsport, right? It was going to be the game for Class C for the boys. I think that would have been a slugfest. Would have been great. But I'm glad to see so many Section 3 guys make this list.
What's interesting, too, I transitioned to John and Daquan because they're both juniors. And if you go down this list, too, you talk about powerhouse teams. Andrew Soren and Jaden Beam both made from West Canada Valley, which is Section 3 team here. They were ranked throughout the year. I saw them play Mount Markham. I saw them play all season, and they just were a force to be reckoned with in Class C. And so you get 2 from the same team. It just shows how well each of them contributed to the team's success as they progressed throughout the year. But the fact that, I mean, John Kennedy from Cooperstown, second team, DeQuan Grant, fifth team, junior from Utica Academy of Science, Soren and Beam from West Canada Valley, Levi Spina, who got honorable mention. He's from Frankfurt Schuyler. And even down in Unitigo, Section 4, Shea Barber getting honorable mention as a sophomore. I mean, that whole list, except for Jordan from Class C, they're going to be back next year.
Yeah, we had Alex Haight from Delhi. He made the third team in C. That's a team that we cover all the time, so he'll be back next year. He's a force to be reckoned with. Dylan Jacob is a senior from Walton, so the end of a great career for him, but he definitely deserved it. Also on the honorable mention, we had Nate Berry from Green, Tyler Bruce from Delhi, both seniors, both very good, just hardworking, hustle-type guys. And then the one that I'm really excited about is the 8th grader from Green, Drew Erickson, who made an honorable mention out of Section 4 from Green. Kid's going to be dynamite, so I'm excited to watch him in the future. But I have a fun Section 3, Section 4 fact here for you. All right. The head coach for West Canada Valley, David Smith, good buddy of mine. He's a Delhi grad, and next year they want to try to have West Canada and Delhi meet up and play a non-league or maybe a tournament game. So maybe we'll get to cross paths here again. So
that and it's cool to see. Maybe you never know what's going to happen when you start thinking of those things. Somehow they work out that they meet in like states or something.
Those guys, both those coaching staffs, the wheels are turning already. They're like, hey, we can both get there next year. So let's. Kind of like Unitigo Cooperstown girls this year. Like, I swear they had that planned in like October. They're like, okay, we'll both win the section. We'll meet you at states. Like, okay, sure.
But that's the story that the girls varsity basketball players were telling me for Unitigo and Cooperstown, that they play their preseason game each year, and they kind of looked at each other. And I forget exactly who told me this, but they did tell me that they literally looked at each other and said, okay, Cooperstown, you're going to win Section 3, Unitigo going to win Section 4, and we'll see you in the regional round. See you there. And then it happened, which is, again, so listen, take my job at that point. Please just come here, just say what's going to happen for each game, and that's it. No one needs to hear what's happening now if you could predict the future like that.
Right.
But the thing about, I'll mention again that like Leno and Kennedy and Grant from Class C that I always found was interesting watching them was they were willing to take any shot for their team. And willing to pass the ball as well. They were willing to do anything for their team to win. For Leno, I have plenty of video of him literally just flying around and crashing through fences that were on to block off the court from fans going on, just saving the ball and doing all those little things. DeQuan Grant, I just remember him taking any shot. If he saw an opening or saw a way to get the ball to one of his teammates, that's what they did. What's interesting to me, and again with the decision making, two other players that come to mind for me from Section 3 when I think of that kind of characteristic and also having success doing it is from the Oriskany team in Class D. Colton Davis and Stephen Armstrong are two names that come to mind. And again, I had nothing to do with the decision making, but I am interested in the fact that there was no representation at all from Oriskany on any of the teams for Class D this year. For obviously the boys here we're talking about, but just because the team was on and off ranked throughout the year, they surprised some other teams and shocked them along the way. And those two guys were really a huge part of making that happen. And they did have the numbers to back it up, to say like, okay, don't just talk about situational, oh, look, they helped the team, but they had the numbers. I was just surprised to see that. Were there any surprises for you when you're kind of going through the list that you were thinking of that came to mind?
Real quick on your Oriskany point, that is interesting. I mean, they just won a state title a couple of years ago, and usually when a team is a little more on the radar, state ranked especially, like that info is out there, but it could be just another situation where the media didn't, for whatever reason, it didn't get to the committee, or a coach meant to send it in and it didn't. Something unfortunate like that. I don't want to blame anybody, of course, but that's what's kind of weird about the selection process. So hopefully in the future we'll make sure that everybody gets their stuff in, I guess. But for me, I was pretty happy with our list. There was a few guys that I know were right on the fringe. especially in Class D. But I thought everybody that had a really good chance to get on there for the rest of the classes was represented. So I was very happy with the list overall. It's always stuff I could nitpick, but overall, I think the committee does an amazing job because they have said that they get over 700 to 800 names and they have to get it down to about 325 from AA to D. So they have that many slots. When you think about it, that's a lot of names to cut down. So there's some guys who are probably deserving that might just not get it. And that's what makes it really, really hard. So maybe those Oriskany names were there. You just never know. It's hard.
Yeah. I can even imagine you take one name from every team, and that's, like I said, to try and come up with a 5-person first team, second, third, fourth, fifth, of just the somewhere around 35, 36 schools that I'm kind of high schools that I'm focusing on, something like that number. That's nearly 40 names you're trying to put on the list, then make that the whole state. I can imagine it's not an exact science. But I mean, I give a lot of credit to everyone for the competition that they put in and what they do as student athletes, again, for their communities and for themselves. And it's just amazing to see how proud everyone is of every single player. When it comes down to it, the state and everyone likes to have the recognition of, we like to recognize the accomplishments and the hard work of those who have had extreme success. But really just, it's amazing to me that, every player, every student athlete, the community is so behind them and really is I'm very happy to see the work that they put in and proud of their accomplishments personally and as a team all year, no matter how the team or the personal statistics wound up.
I was very excited to see Josh Martin from Edmiston make it for us for second team in Class D. Phenomenal three-sport athlete, but basketball or baseball might be his best, but he was our highest selection in Class D. And then a couple of South Courtright guys were right there, led by Seth Ashline on the 4th team, Hunter Collins on the 6th, right? Yeah, Logan Kaufman on the 7th, and then we had Cole Lapinell from Jefferson, all guys that I cover religiously. He was on the 7th team as well. We had quite a list on the honorable mention as well, so I was really happy with how that all worked out. And I know Section 3 was probably very represented, what I remember off the top of my head, I'm sure, because DeRider was really, really good, undefeated boys team, kind of probably a little out of your coverage area over more towards Cortland. But, Section 3 was definitely well represented as well.
Yeah, for Section 3 in Class D, I'm looking right now at Old Forge senior Jimmy Connell's season. And I just remember Old Forge is another one of those teams that I personally don't get to see as often because it's a drive up north. It's just the way the market's set up. It's just far to get to. But I was glad to see them when they were nearby. I went to an Old Forge game where they were playing at New York Mills, which is literally just down the street. And
Sure.
I was standing next to athletic director Tanner Russell. And the whole game, he was pointing out, like, look at this player, look at this player. And I just remember his excitement is representative of the community's excitement for this Old Forge team. And unfortunately, an overtime game lost in the Class D semifinals this year. But, no doubt, you just look at numbers, too. Jimmy Connell had 484 points this season, which is just insanity.
Crazy. Crazy.
He was up there for a Class D team too, which I think about that, right? We often think about, we split it up into the classes, B, C, and D. And there's just this general sense that, if you're a Class D school, you're going to be worse, or if you're a Class B school, you're better just because you're bigger, which I understand, because the whole idea is how much of a pull do you have? How many options, how many people do you have to choose from to make the best team? And if you have less people, maybe you don't have as much of a choice to have a bigger pool of, the more people, the more good people you're going to have, I guess, is the thought. But I don't think that that's always necessarily true. I could see many Class D schools beating, Class B schools, Class A schools, potentially. And so it's interesting how that breakdown works. But I can tell you that Old Forge is, man, I haven't seen, they were really into it. They traveled well, too, to New York Mills. They took over, and they were really excited for all their players, including Connell, when they saw him on the court, just doing whatever they were all doing. He was a big contributor to their success this year.
That's one thing that I really like. I mean, I kind of consider myself to be in the heart of Class D country here, because the majority of the schools that I cover are Class D. And the biggest thing is that they always travel well. It's kind of a Friday Night Lights type of hysteria and feel. I mean, when your team is on the road, the whole town shuts down and they're at the game. I'll see you after the game type of mentality. So I love covering D schools because of that. And traditionally, they tend to play in the smaller schools, the smaller gyms. The place is packed, and I just love it. So I'm a Class D junkie for life, definitely.
So as we kind of see, we've been talking for a while. We kind of are I guess we could wind down the conversation here, but I'm curious to kind of hear before we go, what of these Class B, C, and D boys basketball teams, what was your favorite? Do you have a favorite game that you remember going to of those, or do you have a favorite story that you covered from these specifically that we just talked about a bunch of their players?
In Class B, I would say Graham Wooden got his 1,000th career point this year, and that's Oneonta has a pretty big tradition of great basketball excellence on both the boys and the girls side, and there's not many players. I think we figured out there was 4, maybe 5 in all of school history. So to see him get that was really neat this year. That was the moment that was special. In Class C, for me, the Delhi boys were just a great team this year, and they were one of those teams that you follow that has a ton of personality and swagger, and they were always doing something fun, whether it was a dance video or they just seemed like one of those teams that always had something going on the court and off the court, and in a good way. They were just full of life. So I really enjoyed watching them win the MAC this year and make a pretty good sectional run. In Class D, like I said, I always enjoy watching Josh Martin and everything that he does at Edmiston, and just the numbers that he puts up. South Court always fun to me because all year you're wondering about South Court right here on this side of the section, and Marathon is out by Cortland, and how are they going to meet? And they did end up meeting in the sectional final. And South Court came up a little bit short, unfortunately, for the Rams, but that was one of the biggest moments of the year because both towns were there, and it was at Oneonta State, and the place was absolutely packed. And it was just a ton of fun to watch that game. It was you would think 2 NBA teams were in that place. I mean, it was just great, the atmosphere that was there.
Sometimes it's not a question of if a team will meet, but when is this going to happen? And it wouldn't, like you were saying a second ago, it wouldn't be the first time that was kind of the mentality of it was just going to happen, whether it's, Cooperstown and Unitigo girls or whether it's that matchup. You just feel like there's too much here that for it to not happen.
Yeah, right. Do you have a moment from the year that sticks out to you? I mean,
from these, from B, C, and D boys basketball, obviously the individual players that I said sticking out, it always was fun to watch them. But as whole teams, I started the year. I was at an Oriskany game, and they were saying, "Hey, we switched classes and everything, and we want to show that we can win, and we're going to keep going." And it was interesting to see that be ranked on and off throughout the year. So maybe that's my Class D school, was Oriskany. I really enjoyed seeing how their different players, different students came in and contributed. Like I knew that, I don't know if this was a plan or not, but I knew that if their team needed a spark, they were going to put a student named Johnny Flatico in. Always wore these yellow shoes, which I also happen to have yellow basketball shoes, so I thought that was funny. Reminds me also of a little bit of Tyus Battle from Syracuse last year. Yeah. But I don't know what it is. They put him in, or they're I'm drawing a blank on exactly who it was, but there were these different players for Oriskany that you knew that the two guys were going to be hitting threes, Stephen Armstrong and Colton Davis, the whole time. You knew that they were going to be helping out, making plays. But then if the team seemed to stall, there would be a timeout. You would put one of the other players in, and all of a sudden they'd go on like a run. And it was just cool to see that spark and that energy in Class D. For Class C, we're going to break it down like that, I think there were a lot there. And like I said, there were a lot of Class C was really good this year for boys basketball. I didn't even get there was so much going on and didn't get a chance to cover all of it. But I think the Herkimer turnaround, I'll call it. Herkimer boys basketball started out good in the beginning of the year, and then it just, like, for some reason, just derailed completely. And it turns out it's because they all got sick at the same time. But then I'm going to pull it up right here to give the actual how many games they won in a row. They went on a streak, and if you give me a second, I'm just going to pull up Herkimer boys basketball schedule. So of their last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, they went on a 10-game win streak at the end of the year. They wound up losing to Oriskany, which was one of Oriskany's, I guess you could call it an upset, but it was just kind of the momentum at that point in the season. You thought Herkimer was going to take it. So they lost their last game of the regular season. And then Herkimer went on and then lost to Cooperstown in the second round of sectionals. But that 10-game win streak, there are a lot of cool stories, but that 10-game win streak in the turnaround where you saw Herkimer really, like, start to come back as a force, and they wound up being ranked for the first time. They got honorable mention, and they were kind of wavering, and suddenly they're a ranked team. You were like, oh my gosh, this team, what's happening? And I think that excitement of sports, of, like, the underdog maybe, but, like, the excitement of what's really going on. They were just exciting to kind of watch in Class C. And it wasn't out of nowhere, because, like I said, I was there in the beginning of the year and saw that there was potential. But the turnaround, just all of a sudden they were like, yeah, we're just not going to lose again. And Class B, I really found myself in Class C a little bit more. But I did appreciate going to Mount Markham and getting to see when they played the other schools. Mount Markham was a very competitive team. And whether it was the girls or boys teams, Mount Markham really was very well composed through everything they did. And they were fun to cover highlight-wise throughout the year, just to tell the story of each of their games and how they progressed. But we have a lot of AA, not a lot. We have AA and Class A schools here too in the area. I don't know if there are any down in Section 4.
That list will be out this week. This week for the A and the AA.
So yeah, looking ahead, that's kind of what's coming next as far as the all-state teams. But there were a bunch of stories from there too that I'll be excited to share the next time we speak.
Yeah, that sounds good. We have a lot of A's and AA's, but they're more in the Binghamton and Elmira area. So in my coverage area, I don't cover any at all. But we're always kind of keeping an eye on what's going on with those schools, because they always have some tremendous stories and athletes. So
definitely. Well, before we go, I got to ask you one more question that I have on my mind.
Okay.
How do you keep your hair looking so good? This is the first time we've really had an extended conversation, not over the phone. And I'm just noticing that, I mean, I had to give myself a haircut the other day. I had like a comb and I was trying, I think it worked, but I mean, you look like you did this professionally. How did you do it?
Well, my hair is so short. I have to give a lot of credit to my fiance. She's pretty good with the clippers. So
okay.
I've been lucky so far. I considered a black market haircut maybe if I could find somebody. But I've just been keeping it short. So it's tough for media people, especially radio. I can kind of hide a little bit, but with you being on TV, that's tough. You got to stay fresh.
I was hoping I didn't mess up my hair, so I'm just gonna, like, when I'm on camera, just look straight at it, so you
right.
just in case, because I can't really see what's going on. I mean, this.
Right.
But yeah, that's been fun. I keep telling my fellow colleagues that are on air that if we let our hair grow, obviously our meteorologist, her hair, she keeps her hair longer, a little bit longer than Thomas, our anchor producer, and I do, and our reporters. Some of them have longer hair, but anyone whose hair is usually short, right, like kind of like this, I'm like, we should just let it grow and just make this a statement of how long we let it go. But I once it gets over my ears, I'm like, it can't happen.
Yeah. Well, I have noticed a couple of Zoom interviews that I watched, like with some athletes. They had like a winter hat on, and they were like, "Yeah, haven't gone to the barber, so can't show you that." So
Exactly. Cool.
it's hard times for us guys, it's tough. So
Yeah. Well, maybe we can make a hashtag out of that or something.
yeah.
No, we'll think about that after. But anyway, no, this has been fun. Is there anything else that you have on your mind that we should talk about in this first one?
I mean, just hope everybody stays safe. Take it seriously. Hopefully, we're in the home stretch here, and my big hope is that hopefully during the summer we won't be missing too much, and we'll get to do some of the fun activities that we normally do, and some of these events get to go on, and we'll see. I know a lot of kids have talked about AAU and things like that. I think it would be great if we get to do that, but if we don't, safety first for sure. So just my well wishes to everybody out there.
Yeah, definitely wash your hands. We gotta just stay healthy. Do anything you can to stay healthy, because it's definitely I say what a time to be alive, and we definitely want to make sure that we're staying healthy, and so that we're all able to be together at the next sporting event that we'll all get to be at together. That'll be quite the game.
Yes, it will. Everyone's going to be talk about the whole town coming and supporting.
Yeah,
I think whatever high school game I get to go to, the first one, going to be a lot of buzz around that. It'll be fun.
And final thing, I guess here we didn't mention yet, Nate. Where can people find you on social media?
Sure. At Twitter is just my name, Nate Lull, Lull. Just remember, like lullaby. And Instagram is Nate.Lull. Those are the two platforms that I use the most. And pumping out a lot of podcasts right now. It's one thing that people had asked me to do, and I just hadn't had time during our regular season. So right now I'm trying to interview coaches and athletes, and athletes that are playing in college now, and just any interesting stories I can get my hands on, and hopefully we'll get you on at some point here pretty soon.
If I'm worthy of being on the Nate Lull podcast, I don't know. I'm like you said the other day, I'm used to being the one who asks the questions, not responds to them. But listen, if you think I'm worthy, I definitely would entertain that idea.